Let's talk about cadence and synchronization. These are key, absolutely key elements, and we use them throughout, and we've used them certainly before Don wrote his Principles of Product Development Flow, but I'll have to tell you, it was only when I read his book that I understand why I use them, why we get the benefits out of cadence and synchronization. Well, what are they? Cadence transforms unpredictable events into predictable events. Planning. At Scaled Agile Inc., we use SAFe, kind of makes sense, right? And we have PI plans, and we're on approximately a 12-week time frame because it ties in really nice to quarterly reporting. And since we do take an economic view, it's great to have the feedback. That means I know when our next PI planning session is. That's a pretty big deal. I can lock my calendar around that and almost certainly attend that unless something really goes wrong. And I can plan around that. I can say, well, honey, yeah, we're going to go to San Francisco and have a fun weekend. Or fun week, but let's not do it that week. Let's do it the next week, okay? Because I want to attend PI planning. And it also means that from a delivery standpoint, you make waiting time predictable. We know when we're going to get our stuff. And if you don't know when you're going to get your stuff, I have to shove it all in now. So if this is my waterfall program and my feature isn't in it, what am I going to do? I shove it in. I don't really have any choice. But if this is not a waterfall program, if this is a program that iterates like this, and I have a new feature, I can say, okay, it's not in this one. I don't even try to shove it in. I can put it in that one. Everybody goes, yeah, as long as that's a higher priority feature than the other one we have planned, we're good to go. So that avoids the fact that these programs, especially these late ones, become feature magnets. Everything, the giant sucking sound you hear is all the future features strolling right into the current deliverable and further delaying that deliverable. Cadence facilitates planning, provides more efficient use of resource. The optimum batch size isn't always one. I want to have a conversation between an architect and a team, and I want that to be a lengthy conversation. So maybe if I do that every 8 weeks, worst case, maybe that's a security architect. I don't need to talk to security architect every day, and he or she can't possibly talk to each of the 60 teams they affect. But now we know they can come here. So now I've got my security architect is available basically at the planning boundary. Delivery on cadence requires scope or capacity margin. This is a statement of fact. Makes sense, right? A guaranteed delivery on cadence means that I have to have some capacity margin. Why? Because some stuff is going to happen. We're going to see that principle again and again. Delivering on cadence requires scope or capacity margin. Synchronization. Well, these are cadence and synchronization, they're using the same sentence, like verification and validation, but they are not the same thing. Cadence transforms unpredictable events into predictable events. Synchronization causes multiple events to happen at the same time, okay? So an event like security architect works with the team to define the security specs. That happens at a known time, but guess what? I could also have the security architect update other teams on some things that are going to impact them because they're there. Lots of applications or lots of kind of opportunities, if you will, for these multiple events to be synchronized. Facilitate cross-function trade-offs of people and scope. So if I'm operating in this world again, when do I adjust resources? Well, it's awkward. Everybody's committed to something throughout. Well, if I'm operating in this world, I could say, okay, through this PI, we're all going to work on this problem, right? We're all good feature teams, and we're going to just jump on this, and we're going to solve this problem. Okay, so I can facilitate that. And people can decide to work with other people. I can change scope because now I know exactly what the synchronization points are. Periodic synchronization limits variance to a single time interval. That is an important notion, and I'm going to cover that in just 1 second, but I don't have to cover it now. Regular integration, that's a synchronization point, provides high fidelity tests and objective assessment. Now you can see how these work together. Let's just call it a PI, right? Could be the sprint level, depends on your scope. Each PI operates on a cadence, and I can synchronize my knowledge of the system, might need to move folks. I can figure out how far off I am, and I've got an opportunity for regular, high-fidelity tests and objective assessment, all because I have cadence. What's my opportunity in the waterfall for regular objective assessment? Not much. Lots of work in process, tons and tons of WIP. Really, all it is WIP. Whip, 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 whip. No actual deliverable. I only get to do that at the end. Here we have regular integration, high fidelity tests, and objective assessment. Now, takeaway here from the Lean machine is that to work effectively, design cycles must be synchronized, right? So now we see these two things working together. We want synchronized design cycles, and we have to have capacity margin if we're going to deliver on plan. How does this translate? Well, here's a simple example. I'm just using a planning example, even though the principle applies lots of different places. Here's time on this axis. And these two teams, this is just a drawing, okay? These two teams each deviate from plan at exactly the same degree. In other words, these vectors are exactly the same. You see these vectors are the same? Okay, the vectors are exactly the same. But this team periodically stops and replans. And they go, wow, this is where we need to be, but we're up here. Uh-oh, little variance. Should report that and adapt. I can adjust. And they do that routinely. This team doesn't. And they wander off and wander off and wander off. Some said, uh-oh, we better take a look. And what do they find? They find that they are this far off. They got there at exactly the same rate of deviation as the other teams did, but they ended up with 3 times the deviation. Why? Because they didn't plan more often. What a simple story about operating in the context of a plan. Now, which program would you rather be? Hey guys, did it come out perfect? Nope. Almost within range. Hey guys, did it come out perfect? No, we've got some serious, this is called apology tours. I need to apologize to everybody that's been dependent upon this system coming because it isn't going to happen. This is called, that's pretty good, right? Pretty good in R&D can be pretty dang good. So we can control all of that with a simple mechanism of planning more frequently. That's why planning in Agile and SAFe is routine. Iteration planning and PI planning, iteration planning and PI planning to make sure that we never get too far off. Why are we getting off at all? Because it's innovation. The market changes, the technology changes. Bill's back went out. We got hit by the flu in Ukraine. All that stuff happens, right? So we want to adjust for that on an ongoing basis rather than a one-time event. So how do we do that synchronization? We synchronize with cross-domain planning, and we're pretty stiff about that with SAFe. SAFe is a framework, and you don't have to do everything. Yeah, but you have to do this. And why? Because future product development tasks can't be predetermined. Distribute planning and control to those who can understand and react to the end results. Michael Kennedy's book, Product Development for the Lean Enterprise, an excellent book on thinking lean, basically says, stop trying to predict what happens 6 months out. Distribute planning and control to those who can understand and react to the results. All stakeholders face to face. Management sense the mission with minimum possible constraints. Requirements and design happen, right? This is a JAD session. This is a joint application design session. This is not simply a planning session. Planning is an outcome of the session. Important stakeholder decisions are accelerated. Teams create and take responsibility for plans. This is a really big deal. If I create the plans for my teams, I have the responsibility. I can impose it on them and say, you have to deliver it just like I said you would and when you would, but it's not their plan. What's their real intellectual involvement in that plan? What do they think about the plan? They think, well, that was an interesting plan created by somebody else. When teams take responsibility for plans, they actually, A, figure out the best plan that they can come up with, better than I could have thought for them, and B, they take responsibility for implementing the plans. Now, you might say, we're talking about scale, Dean. You talked about face-to-face communication, and that's really not practical for us. We have 75 people in Mumbai, and they do. And we have teams in Serbia, and they do. And those teams are not present in planning, and Mumbai is planning. And we have product owners that are part of the teams, but they're mostly in the US because that's where we market our product. So that's not going to work. Well, guess where the product owners are today? They're in Mumbai. There's somebody kind of running the release planning process here. Here's the team leads from Serbia. They're only a 4-hour or 5-hour time shift, I forget exactly. Their teams are on Skype, so they're planning at exactly the same time. So the team leads are here. We didn't fly everybody over. We couldn't afford that. We certainly couldn't pick up in this particular train, I think there were 60 or 70 people from Mumbai. We couldn't pick them up and fly them in economically. This is my favorite group in this case. These are all the development teams. They're my favorites too. These are the business owners. They're sitting right at the center of the room. This is their planning session. They are there to make decisions. It was a different group actually that had a sign that they always used, and it said help desk. So they sat right in the center of the room, off and on for a day and a half, some of them throughout, right? The product managers were there throughout. Some stakeholders like the business owners kind of came in and out. They sat there throughout saying, okay, what can we do to help? You could make this decision. You could help us create actual better formed agile teams in Mumbai. You could help with the logistics. We could maybe rethink the flow of that system. You could establish business objectives. You could tell us what's more or less important. So this process in SAFE is immutable. You got to do it. Now, lots of ways to do it, and you can go to the website and look at the case studies, because most people will say, well, we didn't think we could do that, or we didn't think it was important. Many will, and they'll say, we came away with a conclusion just the opposite. We no longer know how to plan, because without these folks doing the planning, we can't begin to think how we ever had credible plans before. And that's the beginning of the end of centralized planning theory, because now we know how to plan. They committed to that course of action, and they talked to these people. Send them back, and I'll do the plans for them? You got to be kidding. That's not possibly going to work. Let's bring them together, plan together, and let's do that on a cadence. Cadence and synchronization, face-to-face planning, cross-domain planning, immutable. Have to do it if you want to get the results.